can you set yourself up for success in reinventing? Well, you've got to learn how to get it done. I'll tell you more in this video. How's it going, Reinventors? I'm Amelia. This is Reinventing You. We're in the middle of the 2 in 2022 challenge to get you going or reboot your going in your reinventing process. I am posting once a week through this 22nd of February. It's on Tuesdays around 9 a.m. and it's about a 20-minute video. So I hope that you will commit to make some changes in your own life and watch these videos. Now, I want to thank those of you who've already committed at the time of this recording. And those that have joined me, I want to thank Susan and Older Than Dirt, Harriet, Jody, Nana's Be Sewing, and Moriana for joining us. If it is not too late, if you want to take this challenge, or if you're still undecided, just watching, just observing, you haven't committed, that's fine. But if you're one of those folks that I mentioned today, please give me a thumbs up or comment below and let me know how it's going. I appreciate all of you. If this is your first time here, I invite you to subscribe, to watch through the whole video, and to give me a thumbs up. In the previous 2 videos, I talked about getting your parameters for reinventing yourself, focusing your parameter. If you had already started the reinventing process and that was where you kind of fell apart, that video will help you. The last video I did is all about taking steps, creating those steps that you need to get to reinventing yourself. And for some of us, it may mean breaking those down into baby steps. I saw somewhere recently that somebody called them bite-size steps. That's another way to think of those, where you break down the big things you need to do into small daily, weekly challenges or things that you can do, and that really helps you. Now, you may be one of these people who don't need that. So I don't need it broken down into little things. I know how to get to those big steps, and that's fine. But I know that for me personally, I need that. I need to take those big steps and break them down, because I always bite off more than I can chew when it comes to challenging myself and making changes in my own life. Sometimes that can set me up, and it could set you up for failure. And I want you to be a success in reinventing yourself, because I want you to live a life of joy, fulfillment, and purpose. If you are in the process of reinventing yourself and this is your first time trying, in the comments below, I'd like you to say, it's my first time, or I just started reinventing. I want to hear from you. Now, in this video, I want to talk about all those things you need to do to get it done. In other words, how to get really set up for success. I want to set you up for success to reinvent yourself. And so I want you to get it done. And that's sometimes where things fall apart. If you have already tried to reinvent yourself, this is the time. You have sort of an advantage at this point, because you can look back maybe over the last 6 months, year, 2 years, since 2020 started, I don't know, and say, okay, where did things break down? What is my weak point? Know your enemy. That is the best thing you can do. If this is your first time trying to reinvent yourself, think about other times when you've tried something new or tried to improve yourself in some way. If you were a success, great, what worked? If you weren't a success, or maybe you were a success for a temporary time or a limited amount of time, and you say, okay, what happened? How did things break down? That is your first, shield of defense, because knowing where your weaknesses are is going to help you to overcome them. Also, to recognize when they're happening. Sometimes when we get a failure or a setback, we tend to give up. We say, okay, that's all. But if you've known you've done that before, you recognize as it's happening or right after it's happening, then you can say to yourself, okay, I know I did this, I've done it before, I can overcome it. What can I do to really get out of this rut or get out of this setback? And that's when you can use a few things that Katie Milkman has discovered. Now, the book that I'm talking about is How to Change. I have it here on my desk, and I got this out. originally when I read the book, I thought, oh, I'll do a video on this. But really, I felt like some of the things she's saying fits so well into what I'm talking about in this 2 in 22 challenge that I felt like I'm going to bring out some of those points. But if you're a reader and you like to find out more and want, some more in-depth information, then just check out her book. It's Katie Milkman. And it has been really helpful for me. And so one of the first things she does say is, if you know your weaknesses, if you know what can stop you, if you know what your setbacks are going to be, probably in this case, in reinventing yourself, then you can watch out for them. That is the very first thing that you can do to help yourself. So that is one of the first things I want you to think about this week. What has set you back in the past? I will give you my example of how I am in the process in my challenge. What has set me back this last week for me has just been, I guess 3 things really. And I guess you could put them all under the title procrastination, which probably Katie Milkman would do. But the things are getting busy and being busy, and the weather. I know that sounds really weird, but somehow the weather is like when it's cold and damp and a threat of snow, you're like, oh, well, I just snuggle under the covers and, forget it. You just want to, hibernate, I guess is the natural thing. And the third thing is just simply, having all these other interests and things that I want to do. So it's sort of like being busy, but then having hobbies and other interests that are kind of competing. So you kind of have to balance those. You have to figure out, well, what can I do? One of the best things that Milkman talks about in her book, and she has a whole chapter on it, and it really resonated with me when I read it, and hopefully it will help you as well. And that is the idea of the spoonful of sugar. Mary Poppins, the spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. I am not going to sing, so don't worry about that. But how can you look at a step that you need to take, whether it's a baby step or a bite-sized step or even a large step that you're putting off in some fashion? What can make that sweeter? How can that be more, would be the word. How can it be something that you want to do? And Milkman gives the example of exercising. And I know that with the weather as it's been lately, I'm just like, I don't feel like exercising. I don't want to get out in the cold and walk and everything, especially if it's not sunny. And what her challenge was for herself was she knew she needed to exercise, but she was in a PhD program and she had a lot of things on her plate, a lot of reading and studying and writing and everything. So when she had a chance to relax, she was sitting down and reading these really long novels. I think in her case it was Harry Potter, and there was a mystery series she was reading. And she found herself not exercising, but instead curling up with a good book. So finally she decided she needed to combine those. And so she started reading and exercising at the same time. I think she was on a stationary treadmill. But, these days you can get a book on audio. So doing something where you're doing, you're taking the next step, but also having something that you enjoy. Another thing that she felt like she wanted to do a lot was get a pedicure, but she felt like that was such a waste of time, an hour and a half, and she's just sitting there. But finally she realized if she took that time to either check emails that she needed to catch up on, or read a book, or even study, that was a more productive use of her time, and she didn't mind doing, and and now I have great looking toes. I don't know what it is that you are trying to accomplish in your steps. What would make things sweeter? I know for me that just getting things done is helpful for me. And for my getting things sweeter is to know that I've accomplished something. And the earlier in the day I can do something, the better off I am. All of a sudden I'm panicking because I'm not sure if I hit record. Let me check that out. Yeah, it's recording. I'm in a panic there. So one of the things that I've discovered, if I do something first thing in the day, I've done it and I feel a sense of accomplishment. And for me, that's a really good thing. For instance, making my bed. Now, I never was a bed maker. I mean, I would probably be forced to make my bed growing up. In college, you can forget it. That and laundry, it didn't get done. And then I got married, and when you get married, you discover your spouse probably has a little bit different ideas of what makes a successful marriage, whether it's leaving the toothpaste top on or off or whatever it is. You have to find some compromise. But also in me personally, I needed to feel, I don't know, good about myself. For years, when we first got married, my husband did certain chores every morning. And he's really good about this. He's very OCD, and so he gets up every morning and he cleans, straightens up the house, empties the dishwasher, that kind of thing, cleans the cat box, all those things that need to be done on a daily basis. I'm not so good about that in the morning. I'm usually, before I go to bed at night, I'm straightening up and cleaning and, getting things ready for the next day. But I discovered if I made the bed, and I became the bed maker, because my husband was also having a hard time getting things done and trying to do everything at once, especially when our son was in school and my husband had to carry him to school. So I started making the bed, and I make the bed first thing. I get up, go to the restroom, and come back, I make my bed. And that gives me such a sense of accomplishment. If I don't do anything else the rest of the day, I've at least made my bed. And at night when I come back to it, it's made. It really makes a difference. If I don't, there have been a couple times I've not made my bed. Maybe I said, I need to change the sheets today, and I just leave it. And then I come back later, I'm like, oh, I forgot to do that. Now, since we're in this new to us house, because we remodeled our house, the laundry is in the master bath. So now I get up, use the restroom, make the bed, and start a load of laundry. This has been so helpful for me because a lot of times in the past I've washed at night, and that ends up being frustrating because I'm tired and I have to get something dry, and then I have to put the clothes up, and it never failed that putting up clothes happened 15 minutes before we're supposed to be in bed, and it's just not a task that I want to do before bedtime. But if I go ahead and get up and wash a load of clothes, I've done my load of clothes for the day, I have time to get it folded and put away, and it's done. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of reinventing yourself. To get it done, for me, I have to have something that I've accomplished. So one of my recommendations is to get it done as soon as possible. Now, Mel Robbins has a book called The 5-Second Rule, and it's about getting things done in 5 seconds. Instead of saying, oh, I don't feel like it, oh, I wish I could do something else, you just say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you get it done. It really does help. If you've not read her book, I recommend it, or seen her video on TED Talk. She has TED Talk, Mel Robbins, you'll find the 5-second rule. And she talks about that in that video. And so what that does is it just forces me to get it done. That's why it's important to have those little tiny baby steps. Because if you're trying to get something done and you want to just get it behind you, you have a sense of accomplishment, you can check it off. If you have a small thing you can do it first thing in the morning. You can do it early on in the day. Eddie and Amelia here, I just wanted to point out that not only can you get it done first thing in the day, if you have a few minutes of downtime, and then we all do. There's been a time where you're waiting on somebody to call you back, or you're put on hold, like with some kind of government agency or something like that, where you have some time where if you have a small thing that you can accomplish, you can use your time wisely and get toward the next step in your reinventing process. Get it done, and then you feel good about yourself. And once you start doing that on a daily basis, it becomes a habit. And then it's easy. It's easy to build up to those larger steps. Now, I know some of you out there are like, Amelia, I am not a first thing in the morning person. I don't like having a morning routine, or I don't like breaking things down. I'm better off if I know this is the step I have to take and I have to give myself a deadline. Fine. If that's how you have to do, you do it. But here's the thing. What prevents you from finishing your step? If it's a huge step, if you don't break it down, what gets you going to work on it? Some people are great procrastinators. They say, I need to have this done by December 30th. And they say, okay, I'm going to work it. And then on December 29th at 11 p.m., they sit down to do it. Now, you may be able to do that, but I'm just telling you, you're going to probably set yourself up for failure if you do that, because there'll be so many times when you will have interruptions, you won't feel like it. It will end up being that day and you haven't done it and you say, well, fine, I don't need to do this. I don't need to reinvent myself. I'm a failure. Whatever it is, I know it. I've done it. It has happened to me. So I'm just telling you, if you break things down into smaller steps, if you set some kind of way to get them done, it may not be a daily thing. You may have to put it on your calendar every day, or maybe you have to just make a list and check it off. Or maybe you have to have a friend who says, hey, have you worked on your goals for reinventing yourself? That kind of thing. If those things are not helpful for you, maybe you have to do what Milkman refers to, I think it's the commitment, what does she call it? She calls it a commitment device. And I guess to me, it kind of sounded a little bit like a swear jar. Have you ever used a swear jar where if you have somebody, or you just trying to teach yourself not to swear, to use bad words, and you can define that however you want to do, maybe it's a particular bad word, and every time you do say that thing, you have to put $1 in the jar, 25 cents in the jar, or $5 in a jar. And then at the end of a period of time, you take somebody out to eat, or you have to give that money to somebody, or maybe you saved out the money for something. I don't know. But whatever it is, what she says is a commitment device can be helpful. One of the things she even talks about is if you set aside some money and say, okay, if I don't reach this goal, if I don't make this step, then this money has to go to somebody else, or maybe a favorite charity, which may not be so bad. So maybe an anti-charity, like if you're, if you are, I'm trying to think of an example. I think she used the example, you could either, depending on your political point of view, you could either send the money to a pro-gun organization or an anti-gun organization. Something that you're against, that's what the money has to go to. What that does is you say, well, if I don't get this done, that money has got to go to this organization that I can't stand, so I've got to get it done. The idea here is that you make a commitment to do something, and the money is on the line. I mean, you have literally said, I'm going to put this money down to do this. And if that's helpful for you, I recommend it. I want you to go for it. I want you to reinvent yourself. If any of these methods sounds helpful for you, whether it's doing the spoonful of sugar, or doing the commitment device, or even just doing things first thing in the morning, I want you, or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, whatever it is, if it's helpful for you, in the comments below, I want you to let me know what you are going to use. Now, this is so important in your next steps for reinventing yourself. I'm Amelia. This is Reinventing You. Go for it.